So let's talk about the basic usage of Handbrake. What is Handbrake? Well, Handbrake is an application that allows you to reconvert video audio files. So let's say that you have like a Blu-ray or DVD collection and you want to extract that movie out of that disc and have it as a manageable MP4 or MKV file. That's what Handbrake can do. Other scenarios, maybe you have like a huge VHS collection like I do, which is in a lossless format, which is completely unmanageable online and you cannot share it with friends and family, obviously. So you want to make a better format for sharing and caring. So that's what Handbrake is for. It might also be for those lovely human beings who pirate movies and want to share them as torrents. So that also works, but maybe don't do that. Anyway, let's go and check what we can have here. So first we are in the summary tab. There's different tabs and that's kind of the main things that you want to care about. But even though I said that, let's go with the button that says open source. It doesn't have anything to do with the open source as we usually know it, but you can open a source file. In this case, this AVI movie, which is my old homemade movie. And let's see if we can play around with that. So format, you want to have either MPEG-4 or Matroska format here. MPEG-4 will produce an MP4 file. Matroska will produce an MKV file. So why would you want to use MPEG-4 MP4 file? Well, it's the most supported online, for example, on different devices, even today, still. So chances are that you want to go with that. Chances might also be that you want to go with the more, let's say, modern format of Matroska, because it's kind of a more modular, and if you want to do changes to the video after it has been created, it's, as far as I know, it's really easy to do, and it's something that is really popular online when sharing videos somewhere that is not like a streaming website. Like, yes, also illegal videos are often shared in this format now because I think it's easy to, store all the different audio tracks and subtitles in that. You can also do some modifications related to those in the MPEG format, but you might have some more issues there. And also, some benefit of Matroska is that if you start an encode here and then stop the encode somewhere in the middle, you can still open that file and view it. If you have an MPEG-4 file, start encoding here to MPEG-4 and then stop the processing midway because of a computer crash or because you just decided to, then chances are that the file is not readable. Could be, but also could not be. So Matroska is more like fail-safe in that sense. But anyway, in this case, let's go with MPEG-4 file, otherwise known as MP4 file. And you can choose web optimized here. This is something that, as far as I know, it puts the header of the MP4 file into the beginning of the file, so it's easier to read for players and things like that online. And that header then contains information about the length of the clip, the dimensions and things like that. All kinds of important information is back there, so the playback can start sooner when that is clicked, but that's not always the case. Maybe this is something that is more beneficial with some older players or certain kinds of players, but there's no downside for keeping it on, so keep it on. Align AV start, you can also put that on, and there's no downside to that either. If there's some audio video weirdness, sync problems that you might be detecting, then it's good to leave that on, so there will be no problems. The other ones you can usually ignore. And let's move to dimensions. For dimensions, we want to go to the upper row and press preview here. Right, so we have the video now in view here. So let's look at my brother from the same mother. And here we have cropping, which is automatically enabled or automatically cropped. If you put none, you can see that the original footage has ugly borders. If you put automatic transmission, then you can see that they are gone. But automatic is not completely trustworthy, so especially if you have a lot of shapes and sizes of images in your video, then chances are that the automatic cropping is not doing the best possible work. but if we check here and go a little back, yeah, we can see that the cropping seems pretty good for at least the upper part of the image, and probably pretty good here as well. Yeah, we'll just leave it on automatic. Usually you can just ignore this resolution and scaling. Usually you don't want to scale anything unless a special case. Borders, no, you don't want to create borders, I believe. Color, yeah, just leave it as it is. And there's some dimensions and information about aspect ratio. Don't care about those. Let's move on to the tab filters. So detillicine or detillicine, the detillicine. I'm not sure how to exactly pronounce that, but it's telecine was a technology back in the day when you had a roll of film. It maybe had some Hollywood movie on it, and then they converted it into a VHS format or some home format or other format, and as a result there might be some artifacting in the image, and if so, then you can leave this as on default, so it should detect if there's any artifacting caused by this technology. In our case, we don't have to worry about that because this is an 8mm footage from just like 20 years ago. Gosh, I'm getting old. Interlace detection. So this is something that people should understand. Interlacing is not a problem really anymore in these days technology, but like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we had this nightmare called interlacing. So that's the technology that goes back in the day to somewhere in the 50s when TV transmission started, and they decided that the best course of action was to have a horrible technology which basically has two overlapping frames in the same frame. Or that's how we see it in our modern equipment. If you use your computer, your laptop, or any screen basically today, they will show things progressive. So that means that it shows however many frames per second, and all of those frames are shown as full image. But in the case of interlacing, no, they are kind of overlapping, and yeah, we want to get rid of it, because otherwise we will see kind of this a smudgy image with lines, especially excuse me, especially when there is motion in the image. Could be also the case with you have some old retro video game and it has interlaced image. People upload YouTube videos and then they, for some reason, don't seem to know anything about interlaced image, so they just leave it as it is and it looks like garbage. So you want to get rid of that, chippy choppy image quality. So you leave it on default, so it will detect if there's any interlacing. And then to de-interlace it, you use a filter. You can choose DCOM, YADIF, or BWDIF. Most people go for DCOM, and then you choose the way of de-interlacing, and you probably want to choose Bob. Hi, Bob. You can also choose EEDI2 or EEDI2 Bob, but rendering or processing the file will take like 10 times more time than bobbing, so just stick with Bob. Hi, Bob. And then deblock filter. If you have like a especially blocky image, a lot of garbage in your image, like pixelated blocks, then you can try to get rid of them by putting something here like light and then define the size of the block or the deblocking. But in my experience, I haven't had any good results with this ever. So I'll just leave it off, and besides, this material doesn't need any deblocking. Then denoise filter, yeah, if you have a really grainy image, you would use this. Maybe choose something like light and see what it does. HQDN3D is a good filter for that. You can also choose NL means, but I think HQDN3D is a better filter. We don't need to do this because we already have this original 8mm footage denoised, and in fact we have also de-interlaced it, so we don't need to de-interlace it again. If you have some mismatch with your material, especially your crappy VHS material where you see that the chroma is off, like you have like a red color here and the blue color here, and they should actually be overlapping precisely, then maybe this filter will help fix that problem to some extent. haven't used it in Handbrake, so not sure about its quality and what it actually does. But sharpen filter, unsharp, which actually means sharp or sharpening, and you can choose the level of sharpening here. So these are just kind of the names of the different filters that you can use for sharpening. You can also choose grayscale for, yeah, I can see how this can be kind of useful in a case where you have some material that is supposed to be black and white, but it has yellow graded or something like that. Then you can choose grayscale and make it normal grayscale. And you can define some color space settings here, but usually you probably don't want to do that or don't need to do that. All right, that kind of covers the filters. Then let's go to the video, which is a really important tab. Okay, so here we define the encoder. So H.264 or H.265 is what you want to use. H.264 is if you want to have like the most compatibility online. And in most cases you want to use same as source for frame rate. You don't want to mess with the frame rate. Just keep it as it is, please. There might be some funny cases where, well, for example, let's say that this was still interlaced, this image. Then we would want to go maybe like go 50 if the original material was 50, which it undoubtedly was if it was interlaced. And then you would go here, and as I said, you would go with the default and then decom and bob, high bob. And then it should give you like a full original 50 frames per second experience. Because the interlaced original image, you know, it has 2 frames in one, but you want to separate them with this de-interlace process. So then you get the kind of real 50 frames that it has. But if you put the same as source, then the video would be detected, if it were interlaced, it would be detected as a 25 frames per second video, which is of course kind of true when you're counting, you know, 2 frames overlapping together. But in the case of de-interlacing, as I said, you want to then select the 50 frames here, so that would kind of ensure that you won't have any trouble. So let's go to the quality settings. Or actually, let's talk about H.265. Why would you use H.265 instead? Well, it's less supported online in streaming applications and such, but it will give you a way better quality with the way smaller file size. So that's the use case, and it's kind of the newer format here, so you might want to use that. And yeah, if you have like very fancy some kind of Blu-ray material, etc., then you might want to go with H.264 10-bit, so you keep the 10-bit image quality. Same goes for H.264 10-bit. But in the case of what we have here, we're just dealing with 20-year-old 8mm footage, so we can just go with H.265. But let's say that I want to share this with friends and family and ensure that the best compatibility, we just go with H.264. And then the constant quality. You want to use always constant quality, never use like defined bitrate, because you probably don't need to, unless you're really dealing with an issue where you really need to define like a set size for the video file. It cannot be more than 50 megs or something, then you might want to play with that, but in most cases you will just go with constant quality. RF51 is the worst quality, but smallest file size, of course. And if you are concerned about quality in any sense, then to get kind of undistinguishable results to the human eye as opposed to the original file, when it comes to SD quality anyway, and I would say probably the same goes for, you know, DVD quality. The same goes pretty much for DVD quality. Blu-ray, not sure, maybe you would need to see what it should be. But let's say I'm dealing with a DVD or 8mm as I'm here. The range at which you would define the quality is from RF14 to RF10. Nothing more, nothing less. It's somewhere here, that where you will find Goldilocks zone for your quality. So if you see any kind of pixelation, which is unlikely, you on RF14, you might wanna, put even better quality. I would say you will not see any difference after RF10 or even RF12 compared to the original file, especially if it were lossless and things like that. If you need to archive your file in quotation marks lossless, because it's not really lossless, but it's visually lossless when you're dealing with H.264, yeah, there might be use cases for that. For example, if you know that you will come back to the file and you want to re-edit again that file that you're gonna make as RF0, then yeah, okay, yeah, you might want to use that for something like that. But since we already have the master file here, we don't need to create that kind of file. We just want to create the kind of a sharing and caring file. So let's say we go with, I don't know, RF14, constant quality and constant frame rate. Never use the evil variable frame rate unless you really need to, jam back the file into the smallest possible file size. If you are serious about quality, then never use variable frame rate. I understand there might be some cases where you want a small file and there's a lot of frames that have just black image for several seconds, then maybe variable frame rate might be useful for that. Here you can select the preset, so how fast this file will be processed. If you go ultra fast, which you would never do, then you will get a really fast processing of the video, the encoding, but it might also produce some artifacts or some weirdness in the image, which you of course want to avoid. You want quality, so you would go with at least medium setting. In my case, I would go with slow. Anything after that is sort of a kind of a placebo, and the last setting is named also placebo. All right, so that kind of covers this page. Then we can go to audio. Let's say that you were dealing with like an MKV file or whatever file, DVD, ISO, DVD disc, and then you would press add all. That would then list all the different audio tracks that the file has available to it, and you could do things to those files. Take them out of the final result file that you're gonna work on, that you're gonna encode here, or do changes. So here we have a PCM file, 16-bit, and a huge quality file. And for sharing purposes online, you would go here and then select the codec, and bitrate would be something like something reasonable, maybe 320. And in this case, we're dealing with a stereo file, so we're just gonna keep it stereo. You could put it to mono if it really doesn't have two channels of like separate content. In this case, yeah, the original camera footage was mono, as they usually are, but this is the edited footage, so it has some stereo soundtrack stuff and effects and stuff like that, so we're gonna leave it as stereo. Sample rate, you leave as same as source. There's literally no cases where you would really want to downsample the file, and if there were a weird case where you would need to do that, resampling, downsampling, then you would probably use some better application for that than Handbrake or the encoding technology that is embedded to it. Anyway, if you were having some subtitle files in the original video file, then you would press add all and just see them here and do stuff to them. Unfortunately, we don't have any subtitle files in this file, so we can't find anything. But that would be kind of a video of its own to explain the whole subtitling thing, or how to deal with subtitles in Handbrake, because it's not clear-cut in any way. So chapters, you would see chapters here if the file would have any chapters. We don't have any chapters. And you can see some tags here. You could kind of remove some awkward tags or add some more awkward tags. Yeah, and there you have it, kind of the summary of what we're dealing with. H.264 and 50 frames per second, that's correct. Stereo, well, we're not gonna decom that, so I'm gonna put it off because it's already de-interlaced. So pretty simple, just kind of downgrading the quality, but probably won't see any difference in the achieved quality in the final file. All right, so then you would press start, and it would start rendering the file into the new format, into the specified location that you have here. In this case, it would be saved to videos folder on my home, and this would be the file name. But anyway, that's kind of the basics of using Handbrake. And if you would be so inclined and you would have a lot of tasks running at the same time, yeah, you can do that. You would see the queue of your different video tasks here. And once the one file is rendering, then you would just use the open source and start setting up the settings for the next file. And again, press start here. And you would see all the files in the queue right here. All right, see you next time.